Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something called revenue recognition. Basically, when companies get to actually book the money from a sale.
Yeah, it sounds maybe a bit technical, but it's really important stuff. We've looked at sources that break down how complex this gets, especially for, big, long projects.
Right. And our mission today is to pull out the main ideas, especially around those long-term construction contracts, and show you why it's, well, actually pretty interesting.
Exactly. It all hangs on this five-step framework. You've got to, one, spot the contract. Two, identify the separate promises or performance obligations.
Okay, like the different jobs within the main job.
Precisely. Then, three, figure out the total price, the transaction price. Four, you allocate that price to those separate promises.
Got it. Divvy it up.
And finally, step five, you recognize the revenue when, or sometimes as, each promise is fulfilled.
That when or as seems key, especially for those construction projects you mentioned.
It really is. That's the big fork in the road. Do you recognize revenue over time as the work gets done? Or wait until the very end, at a point in time?
So how do you decide which path to take?
Well, the main thing is control. Does the customer control the asset while it's being built? Like, if you're building something unique for them that nobody else could really use.
And you've got a right to get paid for the work you've already done.
Yes, exactly. If those conditions are met, you generally recognize revenue over time. Think building a custom house on the customer's land.
Okay, so if you're recognizing it over time, how do you measure progress?
Good question. Often companies use input methods, like the cost-to-cost method. You look at the costs you've incurred so far compared to the total estimated cost for the whole project.
Ah, so it's a percentage. If you spent half the expected cost, you might recognize roughly half the expected profit.
Sort of, yeah, for profitable contracts where you can reliably estimate progress. But it means you have to keep updating those total cost estimates.
And if those estimates go up?
Then your total estimated profit goes down. And that affects how much profit you recognize now and later. And, if it looks like the whole project is going to end up using money.
You have to recognize that potential loss right away.
Immediately. The full expected loss. No waiting.
Ouch. Okay, so what about the other path? Recognizing revenue only at a point in time. When does that happen?
That's when those overtime criteria aren't met. Maybe the contract says the customer only pays the bulk of the price upon completion, and if they walk away, they just lose their deposit, but you keep the nearly finished asset.
So the builder still has control until the very end?
Right. In that case, you track all the costs. You might send out bills along the way that creates progress billings on the balance sheet against the construction in progress asset, but the actual gross profit.
Yeah.
That only hits the income statement when the job is done and handed over.
Unless you expect a loss, then same rule applies.
Yep, anticipated losses are recognized immediately, regardless of the method.
Our sources showed examples comparing these two methods side by side over several years. It's amazing how different the yearly profit numbers can look, even for the exact same project.
It really highlights how accounting choices impact the financial story. It makes you, the listener, think, doesn't it? Why might a company prefer one method, and what does that tell you?
And this isn't just about construction, right? These ideas pop up elsewhere, like the costs to get a contract in the first place. Commissions, maybe.
Yeah, those incremental costs. If you only incurred them because you got the contract and you expect to recover them, you might capitalize and treat them as an asset. Costs you to spend anyway, like general sales salaries, those get expensed.
What if a contract changes partway through?
Depends. If it's like adding a totally distinct new service at its normal standalone price, it's basically a new contract. Otherwise, you usually adjust the existing one.
Okay, and then there's being the main seller versus just an agent, like a middleman.
Right? Principal versus agent. The principal controls the good or service. Before it goes to the customer, they record the full revenue.
Yeah.
The agent just arranges the sale. They only record their fee or commission as revenue.
Gotcha. What about trickier things like buyback deals or bill and hold?
Yeah, those need careful assessment. Selling something but promising or having the option to buy it back might actually be a lease or even just financing a loan depending on the repurchase price.
And bill and hold, billing the customer but keeping their stuff.
You can only recognize revenue if the customer truly controls the product, even though you're holding it. There needs to be a good reason. The item must be separate, ready to go, and you can't just use it for something else.
Consignment sales too, right? Where a shop sells goods for you.
Similar idea. You, the owner, still have control. Revenue isn't recognized until the shop sells it to the end customer, or maybe after a set period. Warranties can also be tricky. Sometimes they're just part of the sale. Other times, if sold separately, they're a distinct service with their own revenue.
Wow, lots of nuances. And keeping track of all this must require careful bookkeeping.
Absolutely. Making sure the detailed sales records match the main accounting ledger reconciliation is critical for accuracy. You have to catch errors or timing differences.
So wrapping this up, the big theme seems to be that five-step model. But the crucial split, especially for long projects, is recognizing revenue over time versus at a point in time, hinging on who has control.
Exactly. And applying that framework involves, well, a surprising amount of judgment across all sorts of businesses, not just construction.
It really shows how the timing of when you count revenue can paint a very different picture of a company's performance year to year.
It's a vital perspective for you when you're looking at company financials or even just the terms of service you agree to.
Okay, that brings our deep dive into revenue recognition to a close. Hope you found that look under the accounting hood interesting. Now, here's something to ponder. With more and more businesses moving to subscription models, ongoing revenue streams instead of one-off sales, how might that continue to challenge and reshape these fundamental rules about when a sale is truly a sale? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us.